and welcome to Confidently Wrong, a show by regular dudes talking with confidence about content we have no right to speak about with any kind of authority, but do it anyway. I'm Wesley Nakamura, and as always, I'm joined by award-winning director Brian Redondo and Savon Jones, aka Captain Bonnie. This is episode 126, and we pull no punches reviewing DC's latest movie, Blue Beetle. I'm confident that it's going to be the best show you've ever listened to, and well, hey, if it's not, you can always ask us for a refund.
Incredible!
Hello, gentlemen.
Hey.
Welcome back.
Hola.
It's been a few weeks since we've been able to record. So this episode is going to be about Blue Beetle, $25 million on its opening weekend, which for a comic book superhero movie with all the VFX that they're doing, that's a pretty low number. I think we're used to seeing numbers, 70, 80, $100 million on opening weekends. I think overall it's only picked up maybe $100 something million worldwide at this point. So probably going to be kind of a losing bet here by Warner Brothers and by DC Comics. Fairly well received and reviewed by critics who saw it. I don't know what the Metacritic is. Maybe Brian, our Metacritic expert, will find it for us by the time I'm done talking.
There's a passive aggressive direction.
You were
that just gave?
voluntold.
Wow.
No, I was just seeing if maybe you could look it up. It wasn't passive aggressive. It was hoping that maybe you'd look it up for us.
Okay, just keep hoping then.
Okay, I'll keep hoping. Alexis, my sister, approves it. She said it was really good. It stars Zolo Maridueña. I'm not sure how. Sholo. Okay, Sholo. Thank you for the correction
I had
there.
to look that one up.
As Blue Beetle, he's the hero. He's a kind of a newcomer. I've never seen him in anything. Bunch of fun, great Latino actors as his family members, and then Susan Sarandon is kind of an unhinged corporate technocrat lady. More the guys didn't like this word. I said she was a shrill version of like,
Oh boy.
what's this name?
Does
Xander?
he like quadruple down?
Yeah.
He could have
They don't
just
like this word. I'm throwing it out anyway.
Maybe there's a different not a thermostat word, was it? Thesaurus word that we could have picked there, or I could have picked
every
there.
word before that. You were doing so great.
Kind of. She's kind of like Xander from Gargoyles, but way less cool. She's not cool. She's the opposite.
She's just a
of Jill.
jerk.
Yeah, very very uncool. Kind of like Giovanni Ribisi's character in the first Avatar. Do you remember that one? He's kind of like that. Just like, we're gonna achieve our goal at any cost. I don't care who's in our
By any
way.
means
That
necessary,
kind of idea.
I feel bad
So-
for Xander from Gargoyles. Like, to compare him, to put him in the same category as these other
Absolutely.
two, like, really
Yes.
flat villains. No way. Xander from Gargoyles had depth.
I think you need to go back and rewatch that series. I don't think that's true. Which one of you nerds wants to recap or summarize? Sorry, give us the premise of Blue Beetle, because it's a character we're not really familiar with. Some people from the 90s might be thinking, is this Beetleborgs? Like, what are we talking about here? Savon, do you want to do it? Brian, do you want to do it? You guys are both way better at the recaps than I am.
I'll take.
Savon, you're it.
All right, I'll take it.
Okay,
I will show
Savon,
this.
give us the premise.
Yeah. So the premise of the character Blue Beetle.
Yeah. And the movie. Like, what's the setup here? People who haven't seen it yet, what do they need to know going in?
Cool. So all you need to know is that Blue Beetle is a superhero. He is a
Is he?
Yes, good start. I like it.
he is a legacy character. So this is a character who inherits a mantle. It's a title. There's multiple Blue Beetles. Blue Beetle originally was, I think, a DC character from like the early 1940s, 50s.
Whoa.
Yeah,
He's old.
OG. And but he was one of those characters who kind of just wasn't really used, wasn't really tapped into. And
Not even B tier.
yeah, like very just like back, C-list hero. So, but
Okay,
eventually
alright.
they ended up doing a third incarnate. And actually, it's funny enough, the three versions of Blue Beetle actually appear in the movie itself. There's the Dan Garrett version, who was the
costumes?
guy. No, just the characters I mentioned. Dan Garrett, the guy who had the
Gotcha.
scarab, who was studied, who they learned about. Ted Court, the one who made his own knockoff Blue Beetle thing from studying it. And then our main character, Jaime Reyes, who's the third Blue Beetle. So they decided in the movie to jump into the third one. The version we know of Jaime Reyes was introduced in 2006, new character. went a new direction. And as you can see in the movie, and if you've watched any Young Justice fans are listening, they went with the classic backstory. Actually, the movie is pretty accurate to what the Blue Beetle entire backstory is. So if you've even seen like the first 20 minutes of the movie, is pretty much in line of what the Blue Beetle character is. He has this Iron Man space war suit, and his tone of his comics is kind of a blend between Iron Man and Spider-Man. So tonally, maybe more Spider-Man energy in terms of being a quippy kid, and then Iron Man just in terms of having this badass war suit. And then they go with the whole voice in his head thing. The character in the comics and other iterations, they do some interesting stuff with what he brings to the table. But yeah, we'll talk about how that translated to the movie.
And
All right.
is it accurate that this is the first major Latino superhero movie that we're getting?
I think in terms of the character being the lead character, yeah. Like there's lots of other like Latino, Hispanic superheroes who are part of like superhero teams. I can't think of them right off the top of my head, but like between the X-Men, especially the New Mutant groups, there's definitely some out there. But if we're just talking, they're the lead, they're the main character, they're the focus, their story's the main thing. I think Jaime is probably the most prominent.
I'm going to look it up right now. Let's see. DC.
I can't think of any for Marvel.
Bane is, well, I guess not a superhero, but Bane is supposed to be Latino in some versions.
Well, we're
Sometimes
talking
Catwoman.
about like
The
their
hero
own
main
movie,
character.
Like the lead
the
character.
story centered around them.
All right, let me see.
In
I
Pain,
think
we
this
got
is-
the white guy.
This is the first one.
Yeah, I can't think of
There's-
any. This is
yeah.
the first prominent one. Yeah. If I'm wrong, viewers, holla at us. Let us know what's up.
Unless you're counting 1970s Batwoman movie in Mexico. I don't know if that counts. Probably not.
All right, I don't see anybody from DC.
I'm leaning no before yes.
Let's see if there's Marvel.
I don't think so. Let's talk about
You don't think so?
Let's talk about the movie.
So the next part is now spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie and you don't want spoilers, sorry, you got to go watch the movie and then come back to us. If you're okay with the spoilers, then stick around. Let's just start with the easy one, the little softball, toss it up, hit it. What did you enjoy about the movie? I'll start us off because I think it sounds to me like on our pre-talk that I'm the one that kind of enjoyed this movie the most. I thought we'll see. Maybe this to me feels like a good Savon movie, actually. I think, first of all, for me, the thing that stood out the most was like most of the action scenes and fight scenes were really good. They were visceral. They didn't feel overly like choreographed. It just felt like, hey, here's this suit. It's got a lot of power. We're going to use that to the best effect. And then these bodies are just going to go flying. And it wasn't just like, oh, let me like pew, 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 everybody. Like it was actually, they had to do some hand to hand, like lots of combat. And then they integrated the suit in a really cool way. And I think it didn't feel as like, it felt very much like an Iron Man fight, but I think without I don't know, it didn't feel as liquidy, just like crazy. I don't know, it probably should have. To me, it felt very like different or new. Maybe just for a DC movie, it felt new. And it led to a lot of variation in how the fights would play out because the suit was really flexible. So in some places he's got a sword, in some places he's got like these kind of like shockwave blasters, in some places he's got like big staples that can like hold people and things like that. So you could feel the impact of the bodies going flying. So I think kudos to the stunt team and choreography there, first of all, for making it I don't know, just like cool to watch. And like the camera work was great. Like it didn't feel confusing to feel like what was going on. I felt like I could follow everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think also shout out to the VFX because almost all of the VFX for the suit at least felt like really real. It felt like it was in place. The lighting was good. It felt like it was part of his body. It moved as part of his body. So I think they did a really good job there with that special effects. It didn't feel kind of corny or anything. So really good stuff there. I think the other thing I want to shout out, George Lopez. I'm so used to George Lopez just sort of being a one note like stereotype of a character. And he was definitely a stereotype sort of one note guy, but it was a very different character than he usually plays. And it felt more like he was more like he was leaning into the like pride and like vulnerability of this character that he was playing, rather than sort of just making fun of Mexicans, which he likes to do in some of his earlier comedy or previous comedy. It didn't feel like that in this one. It really felt like he was saying like, hey, like I am proud of like people like this. I'm proud of people who celebrate their own selves and are like confident in themselves. And part of that was being Mexican American in the movie. So I think shout out to George Lopez's character and how he played it in this one, and maybe the writers who helped him get there as well. Sav, what'd you like about it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to echo a lot of what you said. I think the biggest thing that can impact what you enjoy about the movie is the suit. And I really enjoyed the visuals on the suit. To your point, it had weight. I enjoyed the transformations of the transition in and out of the suit. I really enjoyed even the hot fire molten effect of always burning away his clothes. The first transformation scene was awesome, seeing the suit do all this stuff where it's almost part liquid, nanite, all this. That really looked just visually dope. And even seeing the scarab embedded into his back, all of that, it gave it sold me on just like how this thing is really integrated with him and is dangerous. And again, seeing all of the transformations, you get to see the iconic Blue Beetle weapons that you see in like Young Justice comics, all of that. Really enjoyed it. The celebration of just like his culture, really enjoyed those pieces. I think the music parts were really nice. I'm always a fan of when a movie doesn't necessarily give you subtitles when someone is speaking the non-dominant language of the film, right? So the film was mostly in English, but there's a lot of Spanish in this movie, and the Spanish didn't have subtitles. You had to just either know Spanish or context clues. And I think the movie actually did a pretty good job of, if you're a Spanish speaker, bet you just get to enjoy this extra bit of like really genuine dialogue. But if you don't, they actually did a good job of me being able to still kind of get the gist of what was going off of just context, body language, and then having at least one character, aka a parent or something, say something back in English that, okay, you're not going to give you everything. We're not going to leave you completely in the dark. I actually thought those elements the movie did really well. And
Sav, in the version you watched, was there some subtitles for Spanish? Because in the version I watched, some of the Spanish was subtitled and some of it wasn't.
Yeah, that's what I got too.
Ooh, so maybe the version I watched didn't have, like, I can't remember. Like, I know there were scenes like when the grandmother was doing a lot of her talking in her scenes.
Then you got
I
subtitles?
did not get subtitles.
Oh, you didn't?
I did
Okay.
not. So when the grandma was doing her stuff,
like
I had to just read between the lines and just kind of be like, oh, I guess she talking some stuff. And I know maybe there's one Spanish where I know like pendejo, that's it. I was like, oh, they flinging that word around. So I'm like, oh, it must be.
Yeah, there was a lot of cursing in this
it must
movie.
be intense.
Even in Spanish.
Yeah, it must be intense. So
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean that's how it was for me. But yeah, overall the movie did a lot of little enjoyable. I mean, we'll talk more about the things it didn't do right, but also I enjoyed the family dynamic. The family dynamic did feel like this is how a family acts. Like some of that stuff, even though my family isn't Mexican, some of just the tropes of the grandmother trope, the parents, the uncle, the bickering with your sibling, like the sister relationship, I thought was really, really well done. I'm like, hey, this is really how siblings can be with each other.
That was funny.
I thought they did a good job of. I enjoyed Jaime interacting with his family. I thought that was one of the high points of the movie. Watching them just be a family.
Agreed. All right, Debbie Downer, Brian. What did you think? What was good about this movie?
What was good about it?
Don't tell him to hold his breath.
You guys have been talking for a long time, and I've had a lot of time to think about this. And yet,
he wasn't listening to us at all, Savon.
I'm stumped. I don't know.
I'm stumped too, bro.
What can I really offer here? What did I enjoy about it? That I'm not watching it anymore now?
Wow.
No.
Hater. Take those hater pants off.
Wait, be careful because I got stuff to say too later.
I'm being extreme here.
Right.
But, the weapons were cool, I guess. Like, yeah. And I don't know if it's clear. I don't know if we described this yet, but basically the scarab suit is a symbiote, but it's able to create all sorts of weapons. At one point says like, whatever you can imagine, I can create for you, a la like Green Lantern or MCU version of Ms. Marvel. There's some of that
Late game Iron
that's
Man
being
suit.
channeled here. Yeah, and so like the best part of the movie, and maybe probably that everybody saw in the trailer, was when he whips out the Final Fantasy VII sword, Cloud's
That was
like famous
awesome.
giant sword.
He like claps his hands.
Yeah, the Buster
But
sword.
like it looked cool. Some of this stuff looked cool, but did it feel cool? Like, I don't know. Like, there was no rhyme or reason why he even made the Final Fantasy sword. Like, we don't even know Jaime's character to understand why he would even choose something like that. And then, like, the whole movie, it's basically,
I think you can assume he plays Final Fantasy VII.
okay,
PS2.
I guess, like, can we? Like, does it matter? Like, it has no payoff. It was just like one of those things where, like, okay, we're gonna throw this in there because it looks cool, but there's no rhyme or reason behind it. And then when he uses it, it's like, does he really use it? I don't know. It's like there's a lot of stuff like that. So like, yeah, the weapons are cool. Like the staple gun was cool. Like the sonic force pressure gun thing. Yeah, that was kind of cool, I guess. But a lot of it was like, okay, the suit's running on auto. We don't really know about Jaime and why he'd be doing any of this stuff, or like where he's coming up with this stuff. And I don't know. It felt a lot to be desired, right? It was like there's some interesting things going on here, like in the source material and like the different ingredients, but they did not find a way to bring out the full flavors of those ingredients. And I would say the same is
Needed
true.
more salt.
Yeah, like, I mean, we like, come on, this is supposed to be like a Mexican American family. Can we get more flavors in here? Can we get some peppers? Can we get like, I don't know, some like
Tahini.
bananas up in here or something?
Say bananas.
Bring in the tahine.
Yeah, and so like, like the family dynamic stuff, there's like some good stuff there. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, like George Lopez, pleasant surprise by the end of the movie. I was like, actually, oh, like this is a very quirky character for him. He's kind of like this kind of like legacy revolutionista kind of like ethos. He calls Batman a fascist, which is kind of funny. And like, he's against the man, like,
but he was right. That's why he was so good. That's why he was so good.
And I think if you spend time in communities of color, like, you always know somebody like this. There's like, whether it's one of us on this podcast ourselves, right? Like, so, that part was funny and whatnot, but I will say at the same time with the family, like, maybe they're just checking a lot of boxes here without really saying much, without being like really, unique and particular and fully drawn characters. So yeah. So it's kind of like the movie is scratching at some things. And like even the scarab stuff, right? I do agree, like the scarab thing lodging into his spine was interesting, but that's another thing where it's like, oh man, I could imagine if this were a Sam Raimi movie or like a David Cronenberg movie, or like, the guy that made The Fly, and just like really go out into like the body horror stuff and like make it crazy and creepy and kind of like horrific. But they don't really go into that. They don't really go into
I agree, but I don't think that would have fit where the movie was going.
No, but that's what I'm saying.
But I
like,
get what Brian's
if the
saying.
movie had more of a dedicated style and voice, like all those things would be amped up to another level, and it would just make it a much more enjoyable movie.
Yeah, like with Doctor Strange, right?
Yeah, exactly, right? Like the way Sam Raimi did Doctor Strange, did some like really crazy, whacked out stuff that are kind of unforgettable, right? Like bringing out all the corpses in the latest Doctor Strange movie. That was wild. Like,
spoiler alert.
That sort of thing could have happened with the Scarab. And I feel like they were hinting at it. There was like a little bit of a RoboCop element. Like if they had just like really leaned into like the campy horror thing, I think that could have been a very interesting movie. And um I'm hoping like people like James Gunn realize that there's stuff that they're leaving on the table that could have been utilized. But one good thing I do want to call out that I do appreciate.
Oh, I thought we had just moved on to the next question already.
There were a couple of good penis jokes, and I always appreciate that in a comic book movie. Jaime could not stand up properly after almost making out with his love interest, and he gets called out for experiencing some shrinkage earlier by his family. So,
and the tracksuit right in the bedroom, and the dude was like, "Hey, yo, man,
yeah, exactly."
He got up all awkward.
He's got to hide.
Yeah, he had to hide his schlangeling.
Been there, done that. So kudos to them for taking
for going
for
there.
at least taking those jokes there.
Good God.
Can I say something about the scarab before Savon kind of interjects here? I agree. I think the scarab part was like a missed opportunity a little bit, because the scarab they talk about it as having its own sentience. They talk about it as having sort of as a planet killer, right? They've talked about it as like a world destroying ability. And we never get a sense of like why it's doing that. We never get a sense of like how it's gonna be able to do that. In one of the opening animations, we see that it's actually one of like 6 or 7 different scarabs that are launched into the universe, and all of that stuff. I think if you're into comics or you've watched Young Justice, you kind of have some sense of like what that is, but it didn't make sense for them really to throw it out into this movie and then not show us any of that. And for the most part, right, they just talk about it as if it's Kal-El, as if it's just trying to survive for its species, and it needs a host, so it's going to protect the host at all costs. But then we don't get any like sense of like why is it doing that? Why was it, maybe if it was designed, why is it designed that way? If it's its own thing, what is its like actual goal or aims beyond just survival? Like, it didn't have any real conversations with Jaime in that back and forth that would have allowed us to really like, I don't know, get a sense of like who the Blue Beetle is, or who the scarab is as a sentient character. We just get it as like I can design different things for you, and it becomes more like Jarvis in a sense, right? And that was kind of like a missed opportunity, or like Friday.
And it should have been more like Moon Knight, right?
Yeah.
Based on their setup, the given
Right.
setup, like you would think.
Agreed.
All right, Sav, where could this movie have improved, or where did it not quite as much work for you? You did say it had some lacks here.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue, and these are things that Brian already hinted at, the biggest issue with this movie is, well, there's a few, but the biggest is that tonally, I don't think it knew what it wanted to quite be. And because it doesn't lean into a certain direction tonally, it limits what it could have gotten out of certain moments. And I'm not going to sit here and say I know what direction tonally they should have gone, but it's one of those.
That, because I think tonally it did know it wanted to be kind of in a very like not neutral. It wanted to be in like a very fun, lighthearted, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle style movie.
Yeah, but
in the words of Mike Smith, it was anodyne.
So it was. But you can still, if that was the direction they wanted to go, they could have leaned more into that. So, sometimes when I've seen the character Jaime Reyes, I've seen them lean into him being like having really big Spider-Man energy. I used that comparison earlier. He isn't really quippy. He isn't really clever. He isn't really talking a lot of trash in his fights being funny, which would lean more into that area of tone. But then his suit is a war machine that creates extremely deadly weapons that lend themselves to a very violent, more adult tone. It's almost like the Wolverine in the 90s X-Men, where you have a character with these claws and an ability that involves him to take insane amounts of damage, but because it's a kid's show, you can't show him taking insane amounts of damage or slicing up really quality targets with the claws that aren't robots already. And so, like Wolverine, you get the most out of what he can do when you see him in a movie like Logan, where you can see him taking damage that will kill a regular person and kill people and slash them with his claws. You have Blue Beetle, who has this, powerful Iron Man create anything suit, but he doesn't kill. He doesn't really, he's fighting like generic goon soldiers who don't really pose a significant threat to him. There's no real threats to him until towards the end of the movie. And so the tone, but I think that's a limit by the tone. If you lean into the movie and sometimes, like, what was this movie rated? Was it rated like PG-13? PG?
Probably PG-13.
Like
There's a lot of cursing.
they could have had a PG-13 movie and it had been more violent. You know, you could have had more. Like, I think you could count how many on-screen deaths there were in the movie, and one of them was George Lopez's character, the uncle, in the suit when he stepped on somebody with the scarab. Yeah, like that was I was like, yo, that was cool. I want to get some of that with Blue Beetle, which I know they don't want to have him be a violent killer, but I do think that
he's a teenager.
Yeah, but I think that's a limit of the tone of the movie, because that limits cool moments your character can have. The Sonic Blaster is fun and all, but that's not as cool as just a laser cannon that melts somebody. And it doesn't mean you have to show him going around melting people.
Yikes.
But again, I'm saying that, but I think that the rating of the movie limits how much fun you could have had with his actual power set and see him do really satisfying things with his set. Or even in, and I'm going to draw a lot of Young Justice parallels, because I think Young Justice did Blue Beetle justice, right? Justice. They did right by him. Was, they kind of hinted, like in Young Justice, the Blue Beetle, it's a more of a combative, they both want different things relationship. The Scarab overreacts, is overprotective, he's like a devil on his shoulder saying intrusive thoughts, saying, they're a threat, we have to kill them. And, he doesn't kill them in Young Justice, right? But it's still a fun, almost Moon Knight double personality energy, and it does characterize the Scarab as looking out for Jaime's best interest in a overreactive, not context-driven way, but that still makes for fun character moments and dialogue, and it makes the relationship between them better as they start to find that middle ground of, Scarab, help protect me and fight, but me as Jaime are going to use my humanity so that we're not just an actual war machine killer, which I think lends into why he's a good host for the Scarab. Can hold the power but not go nuts and want to kill everybody. But the movie just didn't really...
in fact, it's the opposite. By the end, the Scarab is telling him not to kill things.
Yeah, which I think is fine, because I think the movie was kind of hinting at them building that relationship. The Scarab starts to speak Spanish and all that, but they didn't really do a good job of characterizing the Scarab to begin with through them having extended interactions. They don't
what
have
is the Scarab learning from Jaime?
Yeah, and straight up,
and what is he learning from the Scarab?
In other iterations of the character, Jaime and the Scarab are having like entire, they did it a little bit where he's having two conversations at once, but sometimes in Young Justice, Jaime is straight up having out loud arguments and like, hey, yo, bro, what the hell is wrong with you? And he's like, yo, I'm trying to stop the Scarab from recommending me kill everybody. And it just didn't really, those were like lost moments that I think they could have still kept this movie as a solid PG-13, not a rated R movie, but still lean into like the grittiness of what this war machine Scarab is, which leans into the other criticism, which, Brian, I'll let you talk more about it because this was a point you put down, but they don't really give Jaime any good characterization. He's, even his law degree, it's not like he had an engineering degree or a science degree that could make maybe him having the Scarab make a little more sense. His background doesn't really feel relevant to the Scarab. We don't learn about him as a person, his interests. Even if we had a scene of him being a nerd with his friends, that would have made the Buster Sword scene pay off way better. But you didn't really get any of that. And so it feels like Jaime is literally a passenger in the entire movie, and I felt like everybody else around him got more interesting things to do, including Jenny, including the uncle, even including what was it, Carapax? Like, I felt like every other character had more interesting moments. The grandma, the grandma. I think they all legitimately got more interesting character moments. Like the grandma, we learned that she had a background. I guess it's like I didn't understand her Spanish, but what, she was like a resistance fighter or a soldier back in the day.
Yeah.
Is that where? Did y'all have subtitles for that?
I
had to just
they explained that the grandma was like part of a revolution.
Okay,
anti-imperialist.
Nice.
Yeah.
I had the context clue because I didn't have any subtitles. But still, but shout out to them on that. So like, lots of characters had cool moments. Jaime didn't get any of that. What's his personality? All we know is that he'll stand up for this attractive woman when she was getting berated by her evil aunt, and then outside of that, and he cares about his family. But I'm like, dude, it's a little boring. Like just you don't have a
unsurprisingly, I like that part of it.
You don't have a passion, but he didn't even have like a passion. Even in the Spider-Man movies, Peter, they characterize his nerdness by having him and Ned be obsessed with Legos, right? It doesn't have to be what drives the plot, but it builds out the kind of person he is, we didn't get any of that for Jaime. We don't even meet any of his friends. He doesn't even have a friend group in the movie. He has his family,
Yeah.
which is, I guess, what they wanted to lean into. But I just felt the character Jaime left me wanting for more, and I was particularly disappointed because I've seen other iterations of this character who, again, I'm going to keep talking about Young Justice, he was one of my favorite characters because he has personality, he has conflict. His conflict is, I want a mentor. What's my legacy? What do I do about this scarab that is a living intrusive thought? And for a movie that was 2 hours, it felt like they did not get a lot done in that 2 hours. And you said Savon is a 2 hour movie. I'm like, oh, bet. So we're going to have time to really flesh this story out. And about halfway through the movie, I'm like, yo, I don't know diddly squat about Jaime's motives and what he cares about and what kind of person he is. And so the action sequences and VFX, as fun as they were, and as much as I love the suit, the main character just was very, very bland. And it's very unfortunate because this movie had the foundation to be really, really solid. And yeah, and also there's no stylistic, to Brian's point, there's no it lacks personality. Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness was not a perfect movie, but it had personality. Okay, shut up. Sorry, I'm just gonna you shut your mouth. But regardless of how you felt,
I didn't like it, but it had some great moments.
But it had
So did this one.
It had great moments.
It had personality. That's two different things.
Yeah.
Like, there's people I don't like in life, but they still have a personality, and they are who they are. This movie just lacked personality for me, and it could have done so much more. The director, I felt like didn't put their stamp on it. There wasn't me watching and thinking, oh yeah, this is a so-and-so movie because of really cool, fun shots or really cool one-shots or even, it was none of that. It just felt like they made him, it felt very cookie cutter in a lot of those aspects.
I mean, if you've seen a Zack Snyder movie, sometimes that's okay if the director doesn't put their stamp on it. But I hear what you're saying.
But I'd rather a bad stamp than no stamp.
Yeah, right. I don't know if that's true. For me personally. For you, obviously, you said it, so it's true.
Damn right.
It's extremely true.
So Blue Beetle uses a lot of common comic book and action movie tropes. There's the you get your powers, you struggle with them. You have the villain who's trying to do this thing to take over, blah blah. There's a lot of comic book tropes going on here. But I think one thing that's a little bit different is that the family is there when he gets his powers. And so he doesn't have to hide it from them. He doesn't have to struggle with it by himself. He has the full support, or the full knowledge, at least, of his family. And that kind of opens up some interesting, different doors for them to walk down, which I think they did a little bit. And the other part is the family is not, the hero in this one is not coming from a broken or pained childhood in the way that, Bruce Wayne is, or in the way that Peter Parker is, or the way that, I don't know, any other character that's struggled with trauma in their past life. That's not how our Jaime Reyes in this story comes about. Did you think that did you like how that affected the way that they could tell the story and the way that they did it? Brian, did you think that it impacted it for you, or are you whatever, they just didn't end up going there with it?
Given everything that Savon said, maybe Jaime could use a little more trauma. Maybe that would actually make him an interesting character and motivate everything that he was about. And we would have an greater understanding watching him go about what he does. But him just being, an earnest kid who loves his family, blah, 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 blah. That it's something that should be important, but because of the way they did it, it actually means nothing.
So
right?
they should have
so empty and hollow that it didn't really have any weight. And I think, them in terms of storytelling, them trying to build around the family, I guess I commend them for trying to do something a little bit different, but it ends up having the effect of robbing the main character of him actually having any agency in the movie. And that actually, if you do that, it also means that the family needs to be incredibly richly drawn and also have a lot of meaning and agency. But to me, in my opinion, I think a lot of what they were doing with the family was just honestly checking a lot of boxes and just saying, pedestrian things like, oh, I'm eating my tacos now. All that kind of stuff. is not really hyper specific to feel like real characters, but also doing it in a way to kind of like hint at, oh, we're different, we're Mexican American and we're tight, we're the races, but like you don't understand, like we don't get a real sense of who the races
It's
are
surface
either.
level.
Yeah, it's all very hollow. Like, um, you know, like unfortunately, a Latino movie, you're gonna compare it with another family. Like if you think about Encanto, right? Like that family, lots of things about that family. Everybody in that family. Like the motivations for different people in that family. And so when they arrive at the end of that movie, like, oh, this is what our family is about, it actually makes sense and has meaning. But for the races in Blue Beetle, you're just expected to accept it. And I think that's a big shortcoming of the movie. So, when they try to build around, like, okay, Blue Beetle becomes the Blue Beetle, he gets the scarab in front of his family. Um, yeah, I think it's good that they get to be part of the adventure, but they're they're just not they're not bringing anything rich into that story because of it. It just feels like a decision that was made for the movie,
Hmm.
right? It's like, oh yeah, we're gonna do this. We think we should do this. We think it speaks to Latino families. Let's go for it, and that's what we end up with instead of like a richly drawn story.
I like that you said that because I think there's an aspect of the threat that he was fighting needed to be more directly tied to the well-being of his family. The the fact that it was ended up being like sort of Jenny that was in trouble, and this lady that wanted to build like these suits that were going to be really bad for the world didn't necessarily directly imperil his family, right? The fact that they were losing their house was the thing that was the problem for the family. And so him being like a dedicated member of the family and loving his family so much and wanting to protect them should have involved somehow saving the family from the threat of Cord and their like gobbling up of real estate more than the fact that they were building these suits that were a threat to other military powers, but not really a threat to like the Reyes' family itself. So I think you're right. I think they were trying to build an indirect line between like, oh, Cord Industries is the problem, and they're also the problem here at our house, but like we're fighting them, but we're not fighting them for the reason that we're losing our house and our livelihood and our traditions here, and our way of life. So I think that's definitely a weakness. I think
Absolutely.
for me, yeah, for me, the fact that he has his family there from the get go introduced kind of a cool element, which was the family. We didn't waste any of the movie time of him like hiding his identity from his family or having to lie to them or getting into those awkward moments that we've seen in tons of other movies. And instead, we got a bunch of allies that could help him throughout the movie in different ways and in very unique roles, right? Like George Lopez as the uncle is very like gadgety. He's very like engineering in his own like self-taught way. The sister is kind of just like very brave. She's just like not afraid just to like be herself and like do whatever she wants to do. The grandma as like, an assistant. The dad as like his conscience is there throughout, even towards the end. And same with the mom. They're providing like that emotional and guidance and stuff. And so everybody plays a role through that final act and through those final scenes that wouldn't have been possible if he had to hide his identity through the first part of the movie. It would have felt way more unearned at the end that they were now involved in this like big superhero fight. But it made sense because they got to see him like struggle with this thing, and they got to be part of it from the very beginning, that they were like, yeah, we're in this now as a family. We've got to figure this out together. And so I like that like that was the direction that they took about it. But I don't know, Savon, what do you think about like having the family be in on it from the beginning versus, just sort of like Aunt May, like not really knowing for a long
No,
time?
I thought that part was fine. I mean, like that was one of the strengths of the movie, was them trying to lean into the family. Like that was a good idea. It was just the execution could have used more work. I
Fair
said, I'm
enough.
like, the more we talk about it, I agree with Brian's point of the characters just weren't fleshed out enough as individuals with actual unique motivations and quirks. I mean, the uncle I actually think he was pretty good, but I think the rest of the family, it definitely still, even as fun as they could be, it fell short a little bit. So yeah, we didn't have a lot of time getting that, but we didn't have a lot of time characterizing them a lot either, and I think that part was the challenge. Maybe you take the dad's funeral and you put that portion maybe not at the end of the movie, and that's a chance for some good character development and for them to talk as a group and reflect and all of that, and you can learn about how people handle things in different ways. There were opportunities to do so. I just think the movie had an issue maybe with its pacing. Maybe it was sequences that they should have cut out or didn't need to have in, but the idea I thought was absolutely fine. It was just a matter of flawed execution. But I think the bigger issue to what y'all were kind of saying before is that his biggest threat should have been, to your point, the family losing the house. And that is an interesting threat because it's not something that just having a badass suit can fix, which makes for more interesting conflict, right? It's like the Superman dilemma of Superman stories are at their best when it's an issue that he can't just beat up. It's something more complicated. It's a system. It's people. It's a corporation. But to your point, when it's all said and done, he ends up fighting a dude with a similar power suit as him and, is able to show mercy and all of that. And that's cool in certain regards, but it's not cool for what Jaime's character and the actual conflict of the story is. And when it's all said and done, the house just gets hand waved off at the end of like, oh yeah, the corporation, we're more chill now. We're just gonna fix your house. I'm like, that's fine and dandy.
Yeah.
Like, and that's not
Here's
that
a new car.
And it's not that it doesn't make sense, but because it does, it makes perfect sense. But it's much less satisfying for the arc of Jaime and what him providing and supporting his family looks like. So to your point,
Nice.
Again, it robs him of his agency. He has to get saved by his family. He doesn't even help his family in the final situation. It's the other guy who defeats the final boss. Jaime, unfortunately, doesn't really do a lot. And it's disappointing for how badass the suit is.
All right. So
He's a walking
disappointment there
MacGuffin. He's the MacGuffin of the movie.
Yikes.
Oh my god.
Yikes.
What? How's that
All
a
right.
Jaime
yikes?
MacGuffin.
I kind of want to skip this question. Do you guys want to talk about how this fits into the DC universe? I mean, I think partly it's just the problem is the same problem that we've had with Shazam and all these other movies is that they're being released and everybody knows that like James Gunn is sort of rebooting this DC Comics universe and in the movies, and it's not really clear if this is going to stick. It didn't do that well in terms of sales. I'd be surprised if it got a Blue Beetle sequel at this point. So I think maybe we just leave it and let lie and say, hey, it's probably just going to be like a movie we saw and, that's about it. But if you were able to obtain the powers of the scarab, the Blue Beetle, and you could just imagine any type of weapon for the suit to make, and kind of within the parameters of what the suit, can do. So you're not going to build a nuclear bomb here. What is the first weapon or shield or item that you're having the suit build for you so that you can take on your foes? Savon, what are you going with?
Ooh, what did I say? There's so many fun things you can do. What did I put in the notes? I'll probably put some kind of fist. Yep, big fist. Yeah.
You're just gonna doom fist it out here? What is
you
this?
Damn right. You know me, Wes. I'm all about putting the paws on them. Actually, the more I think about it, I don't even want big fists. I just want big, like, just hands. So I could literally
I think you gotta like open palm slap somebody.
Yeah. Like the
Zangief.
sister did. Like the sister did with the thing where she just slapped on against the wall. I was like, I want that, but a whole suit. I want to hit people with suplexes, put somebody in a full Nelson, gorilla arms from Cyberpunk, Doom Fist, Undertaker, Iron Claw Mandible, Mankind. Like, I just want to do all that stuff.
I want you to have two giant hands.
The Hulk fist. What's the Hulk fist you had as a kid?
Where's my money?
Yeah, just give me some big ass, the hamburger helpers. Give me the hamburger helper hands.
They gotta have eyes on them too.
Slap somebody with a middle finger. Just have a middle finger and it's a giant, just bow.
Brian,
poke somebody in the eye.
What are you making?
I also, with an ability like this, you got to go huge. So I would want like a football field size monstrosity of a weapon that does something absurd. So I want like a huge Rube Goldberg machine the size of Giant Stadium, with like, massive bowling balls going down ramps and
like the electric company thing
gear that spins an electric fan. And like take like 10 minutes to just like punt a paper football into somebody's face. That would be my weapon. I'd be like, yeah, look at all this great shit, and boink.
All you've destroyed is people's time.
Yeah. Beat that.
Yeah, I'm going less gigantic and absurd. I would just have it make some like shoulder cannons that could like swivel, and take out enemies from range. And then I think I would steal Savon's Doom Fist so that I could also, beat people up in the close range here. And you already got the jetpacks and everything, so you could take on enemies in the air as well this way. I think just having like the rockets going around and like taking out enemies that I couldn't see from behind me would just be cool. Because you can't see everywhere around you, like as humans, we can only see, this 160 degrees.
Speak for
but
yourself.
The suit can see everywhere. So it can turn those rocket blasters behind you or those sonic pulses behind you and take out your enemies from all angles. It can disable toddlers who are trying to, climb stairs behind your back, things like that.
Whatever
you need.
Oh my god, with rocket blasters.
Right? Yeah.
Oh, that would be the stun mode. That would be the stun blasters,
Oh, you're so Wes wants to tase babies. You heard it here first.
Just disable them for a minute, till I can get there and safely make sure they're not, jumping off of the top shelf of their bookshelves, things like that. All right, let's wrap this up. All right, let's wrap this up. I'm sorry you two gents were disappointed in the movie. I still found it enjoyable, but yeah, it's not the best of them out there. I don't think this is a go out and spend money on kind of movie.
Thank you for sharing your Amazon password so that I could watch it.
If I did share it, you're very welcome. And final ratings.
What the hell is this? You trying? What kind of legal? What kind of legal jargon is
Amazon
that?
coming to get you?
Hey, I'm just saying. If it happened, you're very welcome. Sorry, Savon, that the security steps prevented you from getting in there. I don't know what. I disabled it. It didn't seem to help.
It's okay.
Anyways. All right, final ratings. I know Savon hates the rating system because it's not matching.
I don't hate it. I hate yours.
It's fine. I don't use the letter system, so I think it's fine. So final ratings. I think I'm like 7.5 out of 10, like the 3.5 range, kind of out of 5. Like in that neighborhood, something like that.
3.5 range out of 5.
Yeah, 3.5
out of 10.
Yeah, around there.
I think the math is a little off.
Yeah,
okay.
It's not exact. It's up to a little fungible and interpretation there. Not fungible. Yeah, fungible. What's like flexible? Whatever. Savon.
Fungusable.
Fungusable. The Last of Us. I can't wait for that to come out. Last of Us season 2. Oh my god. Also, we should talk about the Dame trade. Holy that was crazy. All right, Savon. Where are you at on this one?
What happened, Wes? Oh my god.
A C.
Welcome back.
The intrusive thoughts just popped up.
Jeez, who's in there?
They fight for the scarab in his brain. Talk about the trade. Talk about the trade. No, I had this movie at a solid.
We'll talk about it later.
I had this as a solid 7.5, but I think Brian raised some really good points about the characterization.
He knocked it down. He changed your mind.
I think the critiques about Jaime were legit enough to take it down a half point. So I give this movie a solid 7. Does a lot of things that are like not. This movie isn't awful, but there's just so many things that the movie could have just objectively have done better, and it's more disappointing because it could have been so much more. Because it's a good premise.
They're gonna put that on
ideas.
the movie poster, Savon. This movie wasn't awful.
Hey, there are movies that are awful. This movie, I give it a 7. Right. Fans of Blue Beetle will probably still enjoy it. It's still a solid popcorn flick to watch with like a friend that's low stakes, but I'm not gonna watch it a second time. I sure as hell wouldn't pay money.
All right. I will say I was about half an hour in, and Jen was kind of watching a little bit. She was like doing some other things but watching, and she was like, "Is this a DC movie?" And I go, "Yeah." She goes, "Yeah, I thought so. It's not very good."
Jen, woman of culture.
That's the bar.
You're married the right one. She has a good eye for this stuff. Not a nerd, but can still be like,
She's definitely not into these movies, so I'm surprised that she knew. But yeah, she was like,
DC is so bad that their stamp is recognizable by casuals.
My spidey sense is tingling.
Like
this ain't good.
Like I'm a
Yeah.
layperson, but like, hey, this feels it's like when someone who doesn't watch sports can watch a player and be like, hey, I don't know sports, but like, are they kind of like not good?
Are they Christian Wooding it up right now?
Yeah, right. My mama could watch Christian Wood and be like, ooh, why he out there?
All right.
She smelled the sour
Ooh,
milk.
yeah. All right, Brian. What would you rate this?
And so I would not call this movie awful, because I don't like to be that incendiary, but it was off.
It was off.
So I,
Like
I'm gonna
AWF.
go with-
It was.
yeah, AWF. It's like,
It's like a Valley Girl calling something
I'm
awful. It
gonna
was
go
so
with,
off.
I'm gonna go with a 55 out of 100.
Oh, man, okay.
Like,
Oh, that's just a straight
Like-
F. I wouldn't bring that home
I
to my
mean,
mama. I would like throw that away. Be like, I don't know
it's-
what happened. The teacher didn't give us back that
it's
grade.
still on the other side. It's still on the other side of, like, if we're just talking about, bad or good, it's still on, the other side of the
Yeah.
line. But yeah,
Barely.
it's just so hard getting over the emptiness that I saw in, like, every aspect of the movie, like character, plot, fight scenes, special effects, you name it, like, just kind of like, ooh, just a shell. It's just a shell of what could be. And, so I will say I would be up for a total reboot of Blue Beetle and our friend Jaime Reyes. Like, even with the same talent, even with the same
The
cast,
actor was
like,
fine.
but
The
just,
actor
like,
was fine.
complete, like, just like reimagine, give us something cool. Like, there's some interesting ideas to play with. I don't deny that. Like, there's stuff that's in the mix that could make for a really interesting, fun movie. This just was not it.
Pour on the execution.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoyed this more than The Flash, but maybe I also had way lower expectations for this one.
Flash is way better.
Flash
like
was
Flash
way
way better?
better. Flash had
Oh,
very
yeah.
noticeable flaws, but it had personality and a stamp. Like it had a
I didn't enjoy
it was
it.
more fun to watch.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy it. All right. That'll wrap us up. Friends, what did you think of Blue Beetle if you saw it? If you haven't seen it and you listened to us, would you watch it? What do you think?
We're not about to get
It'll
nobody
be
to
a
watch
Max
this
soon
movie.
enough. Somebody's
Are
gonna
you
watch
gonna
it.
watch Aquaman after seeing these past three kind of dumpster fire of movies that have come out from DC? Shazam, Fury of the Gods. Also, I watched that over last week. That was not good. Now
Don't forget Black
the
Adam.
Flash. Oh yeah, so four in a row here where they're just batting zero. Good
Wendy's
job,
fo
DC.
fo.
At least they're consistent.
I don't think that's the kind of consistent you want to be. All right, friends, hit us up on Instagram at confidently_pod. Follow us, like us, subscribe to us, listen to our
Love
shows.
us.
Tell your friends about our show. We'll be back next week. Have a good one, friends. See you later. Bye. Adios. Bye-bye.
Later, dude.